Genesis chapter 6. Kind of pick up a little bit where we left off yesterday. Try to go through, share some different thoughts from different passages of Scripture, and see if we can get to a message on the ark being a picture of salvation. I don't think by any means I'm the first person that's ever preached that. You could probably find 1,000 different preachers that have preached that, and that would just be in the South. You go up north, probably find another 1,000. It says in verse 1, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were very fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." Verse 5, skip down. I don't want to go back over all the verses again. But verse 5, it says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." They multiplied, and as I said yesterday, part of the problem was there was an exponential growth of people, and it multiplied in larger and larger ways. But not only did that happen, but the sin multiplied as well. You get any good parent knows. My parents always asked this question, at least if we said, "Hey, Dad, Mom, I want to go somewhere. I want to go do this with my friends." If you just left it at the word friends, we always got the question, where are you going? What are you going to be doing? And who are you going to be with? And you always knew you had certain friends that if you mentioned, it was done. You were going to get shot down on it. But my parents knew well enough to know if you're vague on it, that's it. You're probably not mentioning that friend. You're done. So you had to come clean with them and tell them. I'm saying that to say this. The more people you have, the more of those type people you'll have, and the more people will give into that. It's easier often for the world to lead a crowd the wrong direction than it is to lead them the right direction. And sin just continued to abound more and more, much like today. The world is not getting better as much as we would like to see it, and as much as the last election probably made a lot of people very happy. It's not going to make the world better ultimately. Sin is going to continue to abound more and more and more. All right, so for the sake of time, let's drop down and look at verse 11. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence, just as we see today. In verse 12, "And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth." Again, multiple times he's mentioning, are we getting a picture here? God had a problem with the corruption of man. God was going to judge it. Though people often think that they can continue on in something, I remember, and if my daughter watches this, she'll just have to forgive Daddy, but I remember one time my daughter said, "Daddy, why am I in trouble for this? I've gotten away with it so many times."
Oh my.
And it's like, well, part of those, I'm not going to tell her, of course, if she watches it, part of those is because we didn't know about it. And part of those was a little thing called grace. Each time we corrected you, we didn't let you get away with it. We corrected you. Don't mistake Daddy's grace as Daddy's weakness or ignorance. It's not. Honey, I don't want to punish you all the time, because I want you to serve God and love God and do right because you love God. That's why I don't punish you instantly every single time. It's a little thing called grace. Well, the world was about to miss out on God's grace. And sadly enough, much of the world today will miss out on God's grace. Not because God's weak, not because his punishments aren't already declared, not because God won't absolutely punish man. It's not because God, you got one over. As my daughter, and if she sees it, she'll know, there has been a time or two she's gotten one over on Dad and I didn't know about it. A lot of times she slips up though and she tells me, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then you can tell sometimes she realizes, he didn't know that. No, I didn't, but I do now. Well, you're still going to get punished. But ultimately, you'll never get one over on God. You'll never get one over on God. And I'm not saying this crowd, but let me just say to the crowd here, you'll never get one over on God as well. Not trying to imply anything, but nobody in the world will. So God is pointing out multiple times, when he says something once, that ought to be sufficient. when he repeats it multiple times, you really ought to stop and think about, why does he keep saying this? Verse 13, and God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. The thought I had with this was, you'll often get, if you go in and you try to work with people, you'll find that they'll often ask a similar question, and that is, why would a loving God allow this to happen? Well, he didn't. God created this world perfect. It was sin that brought it about. God didn't create this world like that. It was, as he said here, it was filled with violence through them, not with God. God didn't bring that upon man. Now, can God do things in judgment that may seem unpleasant and some might describe as the same? You might describe it that way, but you'd be wrong. It's judgment. Verse 14, make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And the ark, he says gopher wood. There's been a lot of people that have proclaimed what they believe gopher wood is. The reality is nobody knows. It could be a species of wood. A lot of people, a lot of commentaries will tell you what species of wood they think it is. I don't know what it is. Nobody else does either. Noah knew. That was what was important. Is he knew the message and he knew it clear, and it was up to him in that day to do something with it. The same as salvation is with us. The message is clear. We know what to do with it. It's up to us what we're going to do with it. Now, with that said, I'll give you my thought. What just per chance, let me say it this way. And watching some stuff on archaeology, I saw one day, and I thought, I wonder if that could be possibly what gopher wood would have been. Instead of being a species of wood, they found a piece of wood, actually over in that part of the world as well. They found some fragments of wood that are actually multiple sheets of wood cut thin with pitch all the way through each layer, much like we make plywood today. So was he telling him about a species of wood, or was he telling him to go and make a type of wood, to make it out of a particular type of wood that would be pitched completely within and without, not only on the inside covering or the outside covering, but in every single layer, through and through, the wood would be soaked and saturated with pitch. So that the important thing was the wood was just there to hold the pitch in place. The pitch was what was an important thing. I don't know. When you stop and you look at the fact that the pitch is the pitch is the same word, I believe, for atonement in Leviticus. And what was the important thing about the atonement? What was the key thing in there? It was the blood. So I kind of wonder, was that what he was talking about? To be covered, the ark to be completely covered. We know he tells him to cover it within and without with pitch. And that's a type and picture of Christ's blood. To be fully, thoroughly, completely washed in the blood. That would make a ship that would be extraordinarily watertight. So anyhow, do I know that? No. Can I prove that? No, but nobody can prove any of the other. And since I'm the one preaching, I'm going to mention that, all right? If you've got a special species of wood you like, you can mention that. Maybe it's balsa, I have no idea. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make of it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. And a window shalt thou make in the ark, and in a cubit thou shalt finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the lower side thereof, with lower second and third stories shalt thou make it. And looking at this, the window on the top of it, if anybody ever been to the Ark Encounter? All right. They show you an interesting model of how you could create a moon pool and things like that. It would absolutely work. But there is another way to get the air to flow through it. And trust me, you'd want the wind to blow if you're around those animals all day long. But there's another way to do it. The same way we do it on a lot of ships today. Now, a lot of modern ships use pumps to move it through. But what they used to use was a window at the top, and then you could divide, depending on how you divide the room up beneath that window, that air that would flow, and now they look like a horn. Let me try to give a reference. How many of y'all remember the old Popeye movies and cartoons and all that stuff? And when Popeye would hit the one bad guy, I can't remember his name, so I'm not going to try to. What is it? Pluto? Brutus. See, I was not sure. I thought, man, I'm going to mention it, and everybody going, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. When he hit him, he goes into this big horn-looking thing on the top of the ship. That's ventilation for the ship. And if you set things under it just right, set the rooms under it just right, and you can close the doors off when you need to, and air will get pushed in one side of the same vent. It'll go all the way through the entire ship and forced out the other side. And you're constantly circulating fresh air. And as long as that works, you'll have fresh air throughout the entire thing. And all the waste air, any diseased air or anything like that will get forced out of it. You say, well, that seems a little advanced for knowing them. I don't think, I'm always amazed at the people who think that we are brighter and smarter than they were. That makes zero sense to me. Genetically, it doesn't make sense because we're getting weaker and worse. Spiritually, I don't know that you could claim that either. But I think the important thing is he had God's plan, and that's all that mattered. The plan was perfect. So however it worked perfect. We know that. Just as the plan of salvation always works perfect. And in verse 17, and behold, even I do bring a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh wherein is the breath of life from under the heaven and the earth, and from under the heaven, and everything that is upon the earth shall die. Let's drop down to chapter 7, actually, for sake of time, because I'd like to at least finish this maybe in 3 times and not 4 or 5. Verse 1, chapter 7, verse 1, it says, And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. I love this verse for the fact that he had to say, Come thou. If I ask you to come into a room, where do I have to be in order for you to obey that? Or for me to actually even to say that? I have to be in that room. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you, go into the ark. He said, Come thou. That means God was already in there with him. And God was with him through the entire journey, through every step of it. I'm glad that my Lord never will, never has, cannot leave me nor forsake me. He'll always be there with me. No matter what trials or troubles comes, the Lord is always there with his children. He doesn't let us just go into something. The Lord is my shepherd. He leads us into, through, and out of something. And that knowledge of that gives us peace to go through it with the same attitude all the way through. Whether Noah had that attitude all the way through, I don't know or not, but I know it was there because God would have given him peace all the way through it, just like he can. Us today, through every trial or trouble we have, God never leaves his children without his presence. Well, that's all the time I've got. I'm going to try to move on to the next because we're pretty much just about out of time. All right, give us a verse of whatever. You mentioned one earlier. We'll do that.
What page is